Well, all right, let's get down to it. This is going to be part 2 of the wow factors called details. We're going to start looking at details. We haven't even plugged this thing in yet. We've been looking at 2017 Jimi Hendrix Monterey Pop, made in Mexico. Okay, like we said, we looked at the neck. All our alignment's good. Huh? You can actually look. It's like an old slab board here. See, a nice thick piece of rosewood or whatever they're using now, similar to like what 62, 3, 4, something like that. The old headstock logo. On these, I noticed they're like a Coulson knockoff. They don't say anything at all on the back. And then also, from having guitars with Coulsons in them, the slot isn't cut nowhere near as low as they are on the real ones. When we take a look at one of my other ones, you're not going to be able to see it, but they wrap different, a little different, not as well as a true vintage Coulson style, where everything's nice and tight. How the string is wound on the post is also very important. It should be neat as a pin, and everything should go down the post to increasing our down angle across the nut. Okay, details about that. You want to see, if you ever been to a Navy shipyard, check out those boys' rope work. The rope work is phenomenal, and if you apply that to this post here, you'll see that they're very much one and the same. Everything's nice, and it's just going to add to tuning stability. All right, we talked about the nut and the nut spacing, and then looking at the arch this way at the top, making sure the strings are arched perfect, nothing sticking up and jagged. But we didn't talk about the height. And the best way to check the height of is to hold the second fret down with a finger, just gently, and then there should be a gap at your first fret. And I mean a little bitty, they just barely move. They shouldn't really set on it. Some guys want it on there. It's going to depend on, you're going to hear it. If it's too low, the open string won't sound right, and the fretted ones will start to sound right. So, are we going to call it an opinion on how low should we go? Well, I guess, yeah, you can. My opinion is that there should be a very, very, very little movement. I mean, like, really small. Usually we do all our measurements in 64ths, like I said, 4 to 5 here on the bass side, 3 to 4 on the treble side, more in the 3s. Actually, even you can get away with lower 3s, 2.5 in the middle of the guitar, especially on this is a vintage style with the 7.25 inch radius fretboard, so it means it's curved more. So our strings on the outer edge need to be higher, so when you bend it, the note doesn't go away and crash into the fret. So this nut height is also very important. If the string is laying on the first fret when you hold down the second, soon you're going to need a new nut. And you will hear it in your open strings. Okay, so that's a little more detail on the nut. I kind of like also make sure it's clean, that the strings look real clean. And also the overall height, is it leveled with the top of all the strings? I don't want the nut or the string buried in the nut. We want it flush with the top. You top them off. That's also going to help stability with the whammy bar. If you're not using a whammy bar, okay, but you're bending strings, you should be you'll be better off, a lot easier to get your nut to work properly, because you're never loosening the strings. Les Paul, we don't loosen the strings, all we can do is tighten on them by bending them. But if you start, I forgot. That was George. With the Fender and the Gibson, you can get into behind the nut bends though as well, taking the G up to A, and then back, and then so you should end up, if the nut's done correctly and there's no binding here, it won't matter if I bend it on this side of the nut. I get my G, I bend it on this side of the nut, I still get my G. This nut is set up sweet. Okay, so then let's move on to the bridge. We talked about making sure the strings are in the middle of the saddle and that it's nice, and same look in the hole. Is it coming out the hole? It doesn't have any zigzag in it. And one thing that I missed a detail is the arch of that as well. Are all these saddles going in a nice smooth, just like the nut, nice smooth radius. No saddle is jagged up and down, backwards. Everything has a nice smooth looking arch like it was made of bone or wood. And this one does. It's perfect. It looks fantastic. And that's very important. A lot of people don't pay attention to the bridge. They throw the string in here, throw it around the tree, turn it up and play. And I can't tell you how many guitars I've picked up and see like the E strings like way wide. These are all close. It's like they're not looking at it. They're not even looking at it. You got to look at it. It's just going to make your string spacing consistent, which is going to help make your playing consistent. Because once you get used to this string spacing and you're using down up picking, when you play something that's narrower, you're going to know it. When you play something that's a lot wider, like a classical guitar, you're going to know it. You're going to feel it in the strings. So having that consistency is important if you want to really start shredding, even if you want to just play normal guitar and do arpeggio stuff. Okay, bluegrass kind of stuff where you know where the bass strings are. Okay, so that's saddles, making sure they're clean. All right, and then here the whammy bar. Fenders always have a whammy bar spring, little compression spring that's in here, so it never rattles, and you can find its tight position. And then here a relaxed position where you can get it out of the way if you like. And then this is also the way I always put it when I put it back in the case. The bar never comes out of my guitars. Once they're in with the spring in there, it stays in. You roll it back like this, stick it in the case, make sure that this lever isn't hitting on the lid. You just pull it back a little bit, you can feel it, shut the case, you'll see the case just falls perfectly on it, and that's going to protect your controls. I always leave that up in the bridge too. And I hope this little detail video helps you get your wow factor. Right? Peace on earth.